Good day, everyone. So we are the Group 1, and today we will discuss with you the three topics, which are the ethical and unethical communication in the workplace, including work from home. Second is major cause of unethical communication. And lastly, potential for communication abuse or any illegal way. So now we will tackle first the ethical and unethical communication in the workplace, including work from home, by Ms. Curante and Ms. De Leon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Miss Perdigon. So the first topic that we are going to tackle is about unethical and ethical communication. So for the first topic, which is next slide, please, which is ethical, may I call on Miss Kirante?
Okay, for the ethical communication, let me define first what is ethics. So ethics refers to the behavior of people to choose the right or best path and to make the most correct choice from a variety of choices. So this includes how and why they communicate with their colleagues and clients. So in the workplace, you will face a variety of ethical choices that can influence how others relate to you and how deeply they value you as a coworker. So your communication, therefore, needs to reflect your ethics. So what does it mean then to communicate ethically in the workplace and also at home now that we are experiencing a pandemic? So first and foremost, we need to be honest. So honesty should be the cornerstone of all your workplace communications. Why? Because honesty builds trust between you and authority figures, as well as between you and your colleague clients. So communication can be both verbal and non-verbal. So your actions are just as important as what you say or write. Honest communication not only builds trust, but also helps you and others identify and work on any gaps that may arise in the connection between authority, power, and teamwork. And without honesty, communication fails its core purpose. So the next one is transparency. So when communicating in your workplace, transparency is the key. So first, you need to be clear in your purpose and message. You also need to be lawful. Next, reveal any research that contributed to the content of your communication and identify any errors you made. So your willingness to admit when you are wrong not only shows your degree of honesty, but it also shows how you and your colleagues can learn from your mistakes. So next is respect. So why respect is included? So respect is essential to ethical workplace communication. So this concept should seem self-evident. There are many ways in which a lack of understanding can result in workplace communications that lack proper respect. Consider this, for instance, that whether there are cultural or gender differences and dynamics in your workplace. If there are, you should have a communication plan that builds unbiased bridges between these differences, rather than relying on outdated hierarchies that impasse communication. So lastly, obey the company's rules and regulations. So at the start of an employee contract, companies may need the employee to sign various documents, right? Including the company rules and regulation agreement form. Also, the employee may be given a handbook that may serve as a guide. So some common rules are tardiness, inappropriate dressing, language, etc. So some employees do not properly read these rules and may end up deferring them in the future. Therefore, it is important that new employees properly read these rules and regulations in order to not defer them. So always remember that effective technical communication is foundational to a healthy work environment because it is how you represent yourself and your company as a whole. So ethical communication is relationships both within your workplace and between your workplace and others. So now let's go to unethical communication. I will give the virtual floor to Ms. De Leon.
Thank you for that, Miss Carante. So moving on, we are on the unethical communication. So unethical communication is the opposite of ethical communication. Uh, like what Ms. Carante said, it is being used now as a mode of working during this pandemic. So number one, in unethical communication, you don't need lying. Why? Lying is a big component of any working relationship is trust. An employer needs to be able to trust their employees. Likewise, an employee needs to have trust that their employer will be honest. When people lie, any professional work relationship can completely change. Okay. So next, plagiarism. Our first unethical communication behavior is plagiarism. Plagiarism. Plagiarism describes that uncredited use of someone else's ideas. We see it often in writing when an author steals from other writers. Plagiarism hurts trust and credibility of publishing institutions, undermining a society's ability to communicate openly and freely. However, plagiarism is about more than just writing. In the colonial era, European empires had a strong habit of taking responsibility of any positive event or development, while blaming negative events on the local populations. This created a structure of power that what is based against local populations. It has only been with the ongoing post-colonial studies of 20th century and 21st centuries that many instances of cultural or social plagiarism are being uncovered. Next is verbal harassment or abuse. Employees need to stay away from using foul language on their coworkers. In and out of the workplace, it is common among employers to verbally harass employees when they make little mistakes. This will reduce employee morale and productivity. Employers should always say kind words to their employees. Destructive, or meaning aggressive, abusive, or intensive or sensitive acts are communication events or behavior attacking receivers' self-esteem or reputation. This includes insults, derogatory terms, jokes, especially on the gender, race, or sex, religion, or ethnicity of a person. It puts down backstabbing, character assassination, and so on. It also includes the truth as a weapon, as in revealing confidential information to unauthorized persons, or in using alleged openness as a facade to conceal the launching of personal attacks. It also can include silence, failure to provide expected feedback, especially recognition of good work. So we are now done with the unethical communication. Let's move on to the next presenter. The floor is yours.
Since now we know the definition of the ethical and unethical communication, what do you think people causes to unethically communicate? They say that because of respect, because of transparency, and many more, they can acquire ethical communication. But how about those who are unethically communicating with others? Have you also experienced this? Our topic that I will be discussing and Miss China will be further explained later is all about the major causes of unethical communication. Next slide, please. So, so are you with us? Are you the same with how we feel when you are communicating with someone who have different beliefs, who has someone who is against to your perspective in life, or are you having conflict with those people who are higher or lower than you? Let us explain and discuss what are the major causes of unethical communication. First is we have the differences in ethical beliefs, values, and behaviors. Let us talk about the current issue that we have right now, which is the election, right? Since we have different candidates. Who are your candidates? Are you inside of red? Are you inside of pink, blue, or whatsoever color? I think that we all know that we have, an ethical communication happening between these candidates, even the supporters, right? So these people, next slide please. These people are having an ethical communication because they are standing firm on their beliefs, on their views in political, and they try to instill their views to others, like this is fake news, this is not true, and the other would insist this is the truth, and that causes unethical communication because there is a difference, and you want others to believe what you believe, and the other also, like again, the political views. Next is that we have lack of code of ethics. Just like what have mentioned earlier, there is no respect, there is no transparency, there is no honesty. That's why a person is having unethical communication because they have no ethics. Also, when you are in a school, what is your experience with your teacher when you are trying to pass your assignment and you ask them to extend the deadline because you have work? Do you have any idea? Do you have any experience with that? Can you answer, guys?
So far, none.
Right. So, well, we are so lucky that we do not experience those kind of unethical communication, because some people experience that. Some teachers are not, you know, considerate in their students, and the students are so abusive in time and efforts of the teacher. That is why unethical communication happen when the teacher would insist that you should pass this on time and I should not consider it, and the student is against that and would instill that, ma'am, can you please give me more time because I have this problem in our homes, in our personal problems. And there is the barrier of the hierarchy, because the teacher would think I am the teacher here and you are only the student. Also, another example is inside the business, inside an organization. The boss would think that they are higher, they are at the rank, they are at the top of the rank. That's why they would not listen to to the opinions and to the suggestions of their employees. That's what unethical communication happen in an hierarchy of the organization. Next, we have Miss Shaina, can you share your ideas or your experience with the causes of unethical communication?
Right, so now we will move on to the next reasons of unethical communication, or major cause rather. So now let's have improper usage and wrong method of communication. My question is that, did you experience to have improper usage of the platform of communication? Anyone? Did you experience
Haven't experienced
to
it
have a wrong method? All
actually.
right, none. So let me explain how it happened and how it occurred, okay? So there are several ways of communication, like oral, giving gestures, or virtually by using different platforms like email, messenger, and more. So now in the 21st century, we all know that technologies are keep on advancing. That's why we have different platforms. The face-to-face communication was really rarely in these times of pandemic, and we use communication through online through different platforms. Now the problem is this: not everyone can use a new platforms to communicate. Like for example, the old people, they are not aware yet how to use these platforms correctly. That's why there is an ethical communication. Now, if you don't know how to use a new way of communication, it's better to stick with traditional way, like writing your message and sending it to the person you want to receive it, or simply say it orally with the person you want to talk to. Now, if you are knowledgeable in terms of using new ways or platforms of communication like Google Meet, Zoom, Facebook, or any other social media accounts, you have to use it properly or in a proper way to prevent unethical communication. Unethical communication happens, for example, if in social media you spread fake news. That's what another reason or major cause of technology to become unethical is spreading a fake news. So we have to be aware on that. And next, conflict of interest. So do you have any idea what's the type of interest you have? Anyone? Do you have any idea what conflicts of interest is?
I think yes.
Answer me. Do you have any idea what type of conflicts of interest? Any insights or any guess about it?
I have an insight, Miss Shaina.
What?
I
Can you
think
share me your insight?
I think conflict and interest happens when people try, for example, in an organization, they do their job just because they want to, to be promoted and and they are not, looking after those people that they are in Tagalog, in Filipino, binabangga. They use
All right.
their power to be on top without what do you call this? Without be mindful on the people around them.
All right. I think you got it, Miss Pamela. Okay, so people commit unethical communication. Why? They want to get benefits that have profit from a person or in a certain organization. For example, in a certain company, you always do your best to impress your boss because you want to have a promotion. So in that way, your salary will be increased. And behind those impressive acts, there is a hidden personal interest instead of the organization interest. Another example is in the organization or in the department, in our English department, you study harder not because to sustain the excellence of our organization, but to be on top. So some other classmates or some other people around the English department will recognize you as the intelligent student. Do you know what I mean? Is that clear with you guys?
Yes, yes.
That's how become the unethical communication in terms of conflict of interest. Okay, so now another major cause is that the pressure from the management. So do you experience to be pressure in terms of the paperwork, to be stressed out, something like that? Have you ever experienced that?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so okay, it happens. Okay, in the organization, the pressure happens when the boss asks for too much paperwork in employee, and the deadline will be the same. In order to meet that deadline and to accomplish those tasks and submit them on time, the employee tends to commit tampering or plagiarize his or her work, and unethical communication manifest. So due to the pressure, the employee tends to plagiarize his work in order to meet the deadline and pass it to the boss. So same with the academics too. If the students are pressured because of so much work, paperwork, there are tendency that they plagiarize or tampering the work just to meet the deadline of their professor. Is that understood? guys?
Yes.
Okay, so now we will move on to the last major cause. May I call Miss Pulpenio? Thank you.
Right, for the last major cause of unethical communication, we have the peer influence. All right, so this peer influence could cause unethical communication when you are able to sway with the beliefs of them. Again, we will go back to the first six major causes, which are the differences in ethical values, beliefs, and behavior, lack of code of ethics, hierarchical of the organization, and this one, the impact of peer influence. So when you get to swayed with the other, then unethical communication happens when your present friends are are against with your old friends. So there may be conflict between the two. So now let's know what is the topic to be discussed by Miss Karim.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Awesome. All right.
clear.
So for the last topic, we will be tackling the ways a person can be abused. So this topic will be able to help us know if we are really abused or not. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so what does a person looks like when abused? Actually, abuses is not a requirement for proof of abusive behavior. There are many other ways a person can be abused. And abuse can manipulation, exploitation, maltreatment, neglect, violence, cruelty, harm, hurt, ill treatment, and exploitive. So these are seven ways it is manifested as through physical, mental, verbal, emotional, financial, sexual, and spiritual. So the following list that I am going to discuss is not exclusive, but rather provides an opportunity to explore, evaluate, and discuss any potential destructive behavior. Okay, so next slide. All right. So today we will be the first thing that you will be discussing is the verbal abuse. When we say verbal abuse, this is the use of threats, verbal insults, and other more subtle tactics to control a person's way of thinking. So this form of abuse is especially disturbing because it is tailored to destroy self-esteem and confidence and undermine a personal sense of reality or competence. So a person who has been mental abuse or a victim of this mental abuse has been experiencing this kind of the following that I will be mentioning. Okay, so the first one that we can see is that range in a way where they are experiencing from the other party an intense or a furious anger that comes out of nowhere, usually over nothing, startling and shocking a person into compliance or silence. Next is gaslighting. So, does everyone know what is a gaslighting? So, for me, I think gaslighting is the worst case that we could ever um experience once we have encountered through the mental abuse. So, what is actually a gaslighting? So, this is a lying about the past, making a person doubt their memory, perception, and sanity. They claim and give evidence of past wrong behavior, further causing doubt. And then the next one is the stare. An intense stare with no feeling behind it, frequently mixed with the silent treatment. So, we know how toxic a silent treatment is. And then next is the projection. So the projection, they dump their issues onto others as if the other person did it. And then twisting, when confronted, they will twist it around to blame others for their action. They will not accept responsibility for their behavior and instead insist on an apology. And the next one, the manipulation. So everyone doesn't want to be manipulated, but yeah, like a gaslighting, manipulation is also worse. So manipulation is where make others fear the worst, such as abandonment, infidelity, or rejection. And then the last one for the mental abuse is the victim card. And I have a lot of people knows how to no I have a lot of people who knows how to play with this card. So the victim card is when all else fails, they they resort to playing the victim card to gain sympathy and further control behavior. Okay? So I think we have already discussed the mental abuse. Now let's go to the next one, please. All right, one moment. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, I think it's still loading. Okay. Hmm. All right. So for this one, can we what is it? It's an emotional abuse. Okay, so for the emotional abuse, okay, one moment please. I'm so sorry about that one. Okay, going back. Okay, so we have here now the emotional abuse. All right. So when we say the emotional abuse, it involves non-physical behavior that belittles another person. So the people or a person who has been a victim of this abuse, so they tend to experience this kind of following that I will be mentioning. So first is that the nitpicking. So the nitpicking, this is whatever is important to others is minimized in comparison to their own agenda. So they belittle accomplishments, aspirations, or personality in front of others. So teasing or sarcasm is commonly used to degrade and mock. And the next one is the embarrassment or shame. So they share private information without consent, treat other people like a child, or expose some shameful event, constantly being reminded of shortcomings, often in a passive aggressive way. And the next one is increased anxiety. It is easy to become anxious when questioned about every move or motive or aptitude, feeling overwhelmed from the excessive responsibility, being dumped, expecting others to drop everything to cheer them up. And then next is the excessive guilt. So they claim that they should be the most important person in others' life. It is selfish for others to take care of themselves. So insecurity from being held to an unrealistic, attainable, or unsustainable standard. Then when the person fails, they are treated as inferior. And the next one is the confusion. So the confusion is being treated as an extension of the abuser, not a separate person. And the next is alienation. So this is about belittling friends and family and making other social engagement a nightmare. By contrast, so they will be amazingly charming at their social engagement. And then next is the anger or fear. So they generate an angry response by acting immature and selfish, but then accuse the other person of behaving that way. Usually it is use of intimidation, threats, threatening behavior, or distraction of treasured positions. And then lastly is the hostility or rejection. So this is about stalking and in and away from the house. So this is about refusing to acknowledge worth by withholding love or intimacy, creating a threat or re- rejection. And then lastly for the abuse is we have the verbal abuse. So when we say verbal abuse, this is about this is about where is a range of words or behaviors used to manipulate, intimidate, and maintain power and control over someone. So the person who has been being abused by this verbal, they tend to experience the things that I will be mentioning, which is the first one. um they will be experiencing to the other person that the extremes in volume and tone voice. So one way is to increase the volume by yelling, screaming, and ranging. So the second is complete silence and then ignoring and refusing to respond. Next is intimidating words. So swearing and threatening language come easily when a person refuses to do what they want. So basically they don't accept, or the person who is abuser or a verbal abuser, they don't accept the word no. So they tend to always listen to the yes, or they tend to only they tend to only want the word yes and nothing more. Next is the intense manner of speech. It is argumentative, competitive, sarcastic, and demanding. So they frequently interrupt, talk over, withhold key information, bully, and interrogate. And then next is the personal attacks. Common examples including criticizing, name calling, mocking responses, defaming character, berating feelings, and judging opinions. And then next one is the no apology. So they refuse to take responsibility, become hostile, invalidate or dismiss feelings of others, and then lie and conveniently forget promises or commitments. And then second to the last is the blame game. So this is about anything that goes wrong is someone else's fault. So accuses others of being too sensitive, is overly critical of reactions, one up feelings and opposing opinions. And then lastly, the bro beating. A typical saying include, if only you would, then I won't have to be this way. You don't know how to take a joke. Or the problem with you is, blank, and that is blank. So, and also usually this is we actually hear this kind of line, that kind of word. I didn't know that it happened, or it really came from me. So what have we actually tend to say on our report for today, or our meeting for today? So I just want to note to everyone that it is necessary to know our limitation, because everything that is beyond of the limitation is already an abuse. So there is a saying where the things that makes you scared or afraid of will help you grow. It is indeed true, everyone. However, we also should be aware or remember that when we tend to make an action, always remember that there is always a karma that will return on us. So therefore, learning and growing should never stop the right of someone to be a good citizen. We should be the role model in order to be followed by the younger generation to create a good and responsible society. So I think that is all uh for today's topic, or for today's report. Is there any question?
None.
All right. So okay.
So for the conclusion, Group 1 would like to say this quote: words can do good, but it can also do harm. So think before you speak. Just like what Miss Karinta Bugan have said, that words are where the words have spoken into the limit, it can be an abuse. So that's all. We are the presenters for today. I am Miss Pamela Plapeño.
I am Miss Shaina Perdigan.
I am Ruby Jane Kirante.
I am Karin Tabugan, and I think that's all for today. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.